When Cherry Blossoms Whisper. Volume 4, Winter's Frozen Tears. Chapter 1, Study Retreat Tensions. The sharp chill of early winter settled over the school grounds, coating the trees with a brittle frost that sparkled under the weak sunlight. The air carried that distinct scent of cold and wood smoke, a silent reminder that the season had turned and change was creeping into every corner of their lives. The Student Council's annual study retreat was scheduled for the last weekend before the winter break. This year, they would be heading to a small cabin nestled deep within the snowy forests of the nearby mountains, a place known for both its tranquility and isolation. Haruto sat quietly on the bus, watching the snowy landscape blur past the window. The world outside was a palette of whites and grays, so starkly different from the vivid cherry blossom hues he associated with Sakura. His sketchbook lay untouched on his lap, the pencil idle as his thoughts tangled around her absence and the growing distance between them. He hadn't spoken much since the announcement of the retreat, and neither had Sakura. The two of them sat on opposite sides of the bus, their eyes rarely meeting. The tension between them was thick, an invisible wall that neither dared to breach. Sakura kept her gaze fixed out the window, her breath fogging a small circle on the glass. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself, trying to hold in the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to spill over. To Haruto, she seemed more distant than ever, her usual stoic mask even more impenetrable. She was terrified. Terrified of what the retreat would mean for them. She feared getting too close, too vulnerable, and perhaps losing control of the fragile balance they'd managed to maintain. The memories of past heartbreaks and the weight of her own guilt clung to her like the cold air biting at her skin. If she let herself get attached now, how would she protect herself when the inevitable separation came? Haruto, on the other hand, struggled with his own fears. He was afraid of losing Sakura but also afraid of pushing too hard. The growing silence between them was suffocating, but breaking it felt like tearing open old wounds they both wanted to forget. His sketches, once a refuge, had become fragments of half-formed dreams he was too scared to pursue. The cabin itself was a cozy wooden structure, surrounded by thick pines dusted with fresh snow. The students unloaded their bags, their breath puffing out in clouds as they stepped inside the warmth. Inside, the wood stove crackled, filling the space with a comforting glow, but for Haruto and Sakura, the warmth seemed unable to reach their hearts. During study sessions, Sakura kept to herself, burying her nose in books and notebooks, barely glancing in Haruto's direction. When others tried to engage her, she responded with clipped answers, her usual gentle smile replaced by a guarded expression. Haruto noticed but didn't know how to bridge the widening gap. Momo, ever the energetic spark, tried to break the ice. She nudged Haruto during a break, whispering conspiratorially, "You have to talk to her. This silence thing isn't doing either of you any good." Haruto gave a half-smile but remained hesitant. The fear of confrontation and the unknown consequences held him back. One evening, under a sky dusted with stars and a crescent moon hanging low, the group gathered around the fireplace. Laughter and chatter filled the room, but Haruto and Sakura sat at opposite ends of the long wooden table, their faces shadowed and thoughtful. At one point, Sakura quietly excused herself and stepped outside into the biting cold. Haruto noticed her absence immediately and stepped outside after a moment, catching sight of her standing alone, her breath visible in the icy air. He approached slowly, the crunch of snow under his boots breaking the silence. "Sakura," he called softly. She turned, eyes wide but guarded. "Haruto, it's cold." "I know," he said, pulling his jacket tighter. "But sometimes the cold helps you see things clearer." She looked away, biting her lip. "I'm sorry. I can't let myself get close right now. Not here, not like this." Haruto took a deep breath, stepping closer, the tension between them palpable. "I don't want you to shut me out. We're supposed to be together, not drifting apart." Sakura's voice cracked slightly. "But if I get close, it'll hurt more when it ends. I can't lose you, Haruto." Haruto's heart ached. "We don't have to think about endings yet. We can face whatever comes together." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the snowy world around them holding its breath. Sakura finally nodded, a fragile thread of hope threading through her eyes. Maybe I can try." Haruto smiled gently. "That's all I need." The winter night was cold, but in that moment, something warmer blossomed between them, a promise whispered beneath the stars that, even amid the frozen tears of the season, their bond might endure. Chapter 2, Secret Applications. The days following the retreat felt heavy with unspoken words. The winter air grew crisper, the skies often overcast as if mirroring the unsettled mood between Haruto and Sakura. Back at school, the familiar halls felt colder, more distant, as if their warmth had slipped away with the retreat's fleeting moments. Haruto found himself more withdrawn than ever, his sketchbook filled with hurried, unfinished drawings, bursts of emotion trapped in graphite and charcoal. His art teacher had recently mentioned Kyoto's prestigious art school's upcoming application deadline, a detail Haruto had tucked away in the back of his mind. It was a chance, a real chance, to step beyond the quiet boundaries he had built around himself. Yet, the thought of leaving his hometown and perhaps Sakura filled him with a complicated mix of excitement and dread. He knew he had to try. If he didn't, the regret might consume him. So, in the secrecy of late nights, Haruto quietly began his application. The cold glow of his desk lamp was the only light in his room as he poured his heart onto the personal statement. He wrote about colors and shadows, about dreams and fears, about a world he longed to capture through his brush. But he carefully left out one thing, Sakura. Meanwhile, Sakura was struggling with her own secret plans. The UK University's acceptance letter sat folded and hidden inside her journal, tucked beneath pages of poetry and musings she barely dared to reread. Unlike Haruto's art school, this was a definite acceptance, an opportunity for a fresh start far from the complicated emotions and memories that clung to their hometown. She hadn't told anyone. Not her mother, who was already burdened by work and worries, nor her brother Takumi, who joked about her escape plan but had his own worries to face. Most of all, she hadn't told Haruto. Each day at school, she carried the weight of that secret like a stone in her chest. She watched Haruto with a growing distance, afraid that if she looked too closely, if she allowed herself to hope too much, she would break apart when the truth came out. One afternoon, as the wind whipped the bare branches outside the classroom window, Haruto caught Sakura's gaze just for a fleeting second before she looked away. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of resolve and sadness, that tightened his chest. But neither spoke. Instead, they navigated their classes with the precision of actors in a play they both wished they could rewrite. In the student council room, Yui Nakamura, ever the sharp-eyed observer, noticed the undercurrent of tension. She watched Haruto scribble fiercely in his notebook and caught Sakura staring blankly during meetings. Her curiosity piqued, Yui filed away the details like clues in one of her secret romance fanfiction plots. As the application deadlines loomed, both Haruto and Sakura made silent promises to themselves. Promises to chase their dreams, even if it meant hiding the truth from the one person who mattered most. One evening, while Haruto was practicing his portfolio pieces, his phone buzzed with a message from Sakura. It was brief and enigmatic. "Keep going. Draw what you believe in." Haruto stared at the screen, his heart pounding. It was the first real connection they had shared since the retreat. A fragile thread of hope woven into the cold winter night. He typed back quickly, "You're my inspiration, no matter where we go." She read the message twice before slipping her phone into her pocket, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. In separate rooms, under the same starlit sky, both Haruto and Sakura prepared for a future that neither was ready to face alone. Chapter 3, New Year's Wishes. The dawn of the new year arrived quietly, the town wrapped in a soft blanket of snow that muted even the most familiar sounds. Streets glistened under a fragile frost, and the air smelled sharp and clean, promising fresh beginnings but carrying with it an invisible weight of unspoken hopes and fears. Haruto woke early, his mind already restless despite the exhaustion of the past weeks. Today wasn't just the start of a new calendar year, it was a day loaded with significance, a day for wishes, resolutions, and maybe, if he dared to hope, some kind of reconciliation. He wasn't the only one burdened by that hope. Sakura, too, had risen before sunrise, dressed carefully against the biting cold, and made her way to the local shrine with a small envelope in her hand, an application acceptance she hadn't dared share with anyone yet. The shrine was quiet except for the soft crunch of footsteps on the snowy path. Torii gates stood silent, framed by white branches that seemed to hold their breath beneath the weight of winter. It was a sacred place of reflection, and both Haruto and Sakura found themselves drawn there separately, each seeking courage from the stillness. Sakura moved with measured steps, her breath visible in the cold air, her heart pounding like a quiet drum. She clasped the envelope tightly, knowing the future inside it could both free and break her. At the prayer altar, she knelt, eyes closed, whispering words that mingled with the chill. "Please give me the strength to be brave, to trust, to not run away from the things that scare me most." Her voice was fragile, but beneath the surface it carried the fierce determination that had kept her moving forward through all the shadows. Meanwhile, Haruto approached the same altar moments later. His fingers traced the edges of the sketchbook he always carried, his mind swirling with images of colors and dreams. He closed his eyes and pressed his palms together. "I wish for courage," he said softly, "to face what comes next, and for the chance to build something real with her. No more silence." Their wishes, though spoken apart, floated upward in the crisp air, a delicate symmetry between two hearts beating uncertainly in parallel. After their prayers, the town stirred to life with New Year celebrations. The distant clanging of temple bells, the laughter of children bundled in scarves, the smell of roasting sweet potatoes and warm tea drifting through narrow alleys. At school later that day, the atmosphere was lighter, filled with students exchanging resolutions and hopes. Haruto and Sakura shared few words, but exchanged a glance laden with meaning, fragile threads reconnecting amid the cold distance. Yet the knowledge of their secret plans hovered between them like a thin frost, a delicate barrier neither was ready to break. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the snowy rooftops pink, Haruto sat by his window, staring at the stars that seemed impossibly bright against the dark sky. He pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw a cherry blossom tree in full bloom, its petals fluttering gently in an imagined spring breeze. Each stroke was a prayer, a wish for something lasting and beautiful beyond the winter's frozen tears. Far away in her room, Sakura read through her own poems, the verses trembling on the page like whispers of her heart. Her fingers lingered on one final line she had just written, "In every falling petal there lies a promise of roots that hold." For both of them, the new year was not just a passage of time but a silent vow. To face the uncertain future, to grow despite the distance, and to find their way back to each other, no matter what storms awaited. Chapter 4. Valentine's Chaos. The school corridors were decorated with delicate red and pink streamers, heart-shaped cards, and shelves groaning under the weight of countless chocolate boxes. Valentine's Day had arrived, bringing with it the usual buzz of excitement, secret crushes, and the inevitable chaos that followed. Haruto navigated through the crowd of students, clutching a small, carefully wrapped package in his coat pocket. A quiet promise he wasn't yet ready to reveal. The memory of the New Year's wishes still lingered in his heart, a fragile hope flickering amid the tension that clung to the winter air. Sakura's presence at school was more distant than ever. Her usual stoic perfection was now accompanied by a certain sharpness, a protective shield that kept others, especially Haruto, at arm's length. Her eyes, however, betrayed a storm beneath the calm surface, an invisible battle she fought daily. As lunchtime approached, whispers spread like wildfire. It was a day when shy confessions mingled with bold declarations, and everyone waited to see who would give chocolate, and what kind. Sakura sat alone at the back of the classroom, meticulously avoiding eye contact. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened a small box of chocolates she had made herself. Unlike the sweet, glossy chocolates that were typically exchanged, hers were bitter dark, with a slight edge of something unsaid. "Bitter chocolate," her classmates whispered, curious and confused. It was a message wrapped in cocoa, a subtle rejection, a warning, or perhaps a quiet confession of her conflicted heart. Meanwhile, Haruto's day unfolded in a very different way. Among the pile of chocolate gifts he received, one small, unassuming box caught his attention. It was wrapped in soft pink paper with a delicate ribbon, and inside was a single piece of sweet chocolate, accompanied by a folded note. He unfolded the note carefully, his fingers brushing against the neat handwriting. "You're my exception." The words sent a warmth through him, cutting through the cold walls he had built. It was a simple phrase, but to Haruto, it felt like the softest, clearest confession. His heart quickened as he scanned the room, searching for the giver. From across the classroom, Sakura's eyes briefly met his, an almost imperceptible flicker of something tender and vulnerable. Then she looked away, the moment passing like a sigh. The bittersweet tension between them was palpable. The bitter chocolates she handed out were a shield, a way to keep distance, yet the sweet chocolate meant for him was a secret thread pulling them closer, tangled in hesitation and fear. As the day progressed, rumors swirled and classmates speculated about the meaning behind the chocolates. Kaido, ever the chaotic friend, teased Haruto relentlessly, trying to coax him into confessing what the note meant to him. But Haruto only smiled quietly, keeping the secret close. Later, beneath the pale winter sun filtering through frosted windows, Sakura lingered near the art room, struggling to contain the whirlwind inside her. Her chest tightened as memories of shared moments with Haruto, laughter, silence, stolen glances, flooded back, mingling with the sharp sting of uncertainty. In that moment, her resolve wavered. She wanted to throw away the bitter chocolates, to tell Haruto everything she felt, but fear rooted her to the spot. "Why do you hide behind those chocolates?" Akira's voice interrupted her thoughts, calm but teasing. Sakura glanced at her cousin, who leaned casually against the doorway, a mischievous smirk playing on his lips. "Because sometimes words are too loud for what my heart whispers," she replied softly. Akira's gaze softened. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding." Meanwhile, Haruto carefully tucked the sweet chocolate into his sketchbook, a small, silent vow blooming inside him. He was ready to chase the promise hidden beneath the bitter and sweet layers of the day. As twilight settled and students filtered out, the weight of Valentine's Day lingered, a delicate mix of confusion, hope, and the fragile beginnings of courage. The winter air outside bit sharply, but inside, a quiet warmth grew between two hearts learning to speak their truths, one chocolate at a time. Chapter 5, Art School Fears. The morning air was sharp with frost as Haruto sat quietly at the breakfast table, staring at the blank sheet of sketch paper before him. His pencil hovered, uncertain, over the surface, the familiar rhythm of drawing disrupted by a weight pressing on his chest. Today was the day of his art school interview in Kyoto, a pivotal moment he had prepared for in secret, just like Sakura with her own decision to study abroad. Though the sun peeked through the window, its warmth failed to reach the cold knot of anxiety that had lodged itself deep inside him. Haruto's fingers trembled slightly, his usual calm shattered by the pressure of the unknown. His phone buzzed softly beside him. A message from Sakura appeared on the screen: "Draw our future." Those simple words sparked something inside him, a flicker of courage, fragile but real. For a moment, he remembered the cherry blossoms they had sketched together, the poems she had written, the silent promises they had shared in the past months. Drawing wasn't just about lines and colors anymore, it was about capturing hope, dreams, and perhaps a chance for something more. He closed his eyes and let the pencil flow. The shapes took form slowly, a delicate scene of two figures beneath a blossoming cherry tree, hands almost touching, the branches intertwining above them like a fragile shelter. The sketch was far from perfect, but it was honest, filled with the feelings he had long buried. When the time came, Haruto boarded the train to Kyoto, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. The city's sprawling art academy loomed ahead, its grand facade intimidating yet promising. Inside the interview room, the panel of stern professors sat silently as Haruto laid out his portfolio. His usual confidence wavered, and when asked to draw something on the spot, his mind blanked. The pencil trembled in his hand, and the pressure of their expectant eyes felt suffocating. Panic crept in. His strokes became erratic, disconnected. The lines that normally danced with emotion now appeared forced and hollow. The silence in the room grew heavier with each passing second. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm him, his phone buzzed again. A new message from Sakura glowed softly on the screen. "Remember why you draw. Draw our future." Haruto's breath hitched. He glanced at the message one more time, then lifted his pencil with renewed determination. The lines became steadier, more deliberate, flowing from his heart instead of his fear. The image that emerged was a mirror of his earlier sketch. A promise of togetherness beneath cherry blossoms, fragile but steadfast. As he finished, the professors exchanged subtle nods. The tension in the room eased, and Haruto allowed himself a small, relieved smile. Meanwhile, back at school, Sakura sat quietly in the literature club room, her gaze distant. The decision to leave for the UK had settled heavily on her soul. The words she wrote in her notebook reflected the turmoil within. Poems about distance, sacrifice, and the ache of growing apart from the person she loved. She imagined Haruto struggling through his interview, wondering if he felt the same fear and hope she did. Their dreams pulled them in different directions, yet the invisible thread of their bond stretched taut between them. That evening, Haruto returned home, his hands still slightly shaky but his heart a little lighter. The text from Sakura was already there, waiting. "No matter where we go, the cherry blossoms will always bloom between us." Haruto read the words again and again, the promise echoing in his mind. He realized that fear was only part of the journey. To truly chase their dreams, they would need to face it together, even if that meant walking separate paths for a time. Outside, the first snow began to fall, soft and silent, blanketing the world in white, a reminder that even in the coldest winters, hope could bloom anew. Chapter 6. The fight. The silence between Haruto and Sakura had grown heavier over the past few days. An invisible wall built from unspoken truths and hidden fears. The distance wasn't just physical. It gnawed at their hearts, fraying the delicate bond they had fought so hard to nurture. Haruto found himself restless, unable to focus on his sketches or even the familiar warmth of his home. Every time he tried to call or text Sakura, she remained distant, polite but cold, an unfamiliar barrier he struggled to break. Finally, that afternoon, beneath the gray winter sky and the skeletal branches of the cherry tree in the school courtyard, their paths crossed. Haruto's breath hitched as he spotted her across the snow-dusted ground, her shoulders stiff, eyes downcast. He didn't want to let another day slip away without confronting the truth. Gathering his courage, he called out her name. Sakura. She stopped, turning slowly. Her gaze was guarded but tired, like a fragile porcelain doll teetering on the edge of breaking. "We need to talk," Haruto said, his voice low but firm. Sakura hesitated, then nodded, motioning for him to follow her to a quieter spot beneath the school's covered walkway. The cold bit at their cheeks as they faced each other, the tension thick enough to freeze the air. Haruto's voice cracked with frustration and desperation. "Why won't you just be honest with me? Why are you hiding everything? I saw the application to Kyoto's art school on your desk. You're leaving. You didn't tell me." Sakura's eyes flashed with a mix of hurt and anger. "I didn't tell you because you wouldn't understand. You're so afraid of chasing your dreams, Haruto. You hold back, afraid of what might happen if you fail. And I'm terrified of staying here, of being trapped in this guilt and this past. I can't do it anymore." Haruto's chest tightened, the sting of her words cutting deep. "I'm not afraid. I just don't want to lose you." She shook her head, tears brimming. "You don't get it. You're afraid to chase dreams, I'm afraid to stay." Their voices rose, echoing through the empty courtyard, each word heavy with pain and regret. The fight was not just about the application or the future, but everything they hadn't said, the sacrifices, the fears, the love tangled in uncertainty. Haruto took a shaky step forward, voice softer now. "I'm scared too. But maybe that's why we have to be honest with ourselves and with each other." Sakura looked away, her breath forming a mist in the cold air. For a moment, silence fell between them, filled only by the distant crunch of footsteps on snow. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to lose us. But I don't know how to keep holding on." Haruto reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Then don't. Let's face it together, even if it means pain or distance. Because love is more than fear." Her tears spilled free, mingling with the snowflakes drifting down. The fight had torn open wounds, but in its aftermath, a fragile hope began to bloom. They stood there, beneath the bare cherry tree, two souls exposed and trembling, but still unwilling to let go. Chapter 7. Empty Desk. Days slipped by with a cold, hollow echo in the school halls where Sakura's presence once filled every corner. Her desk sat empty now, a silent reminder of the distance growing between her and Haruto and of the promise left unspoken beneath the winter sky. Haruto found himself wandering the classroom longer than necessary, staring at that empty space. The small, faded cherry blossom sticker on the corner of her desk caught the light in the afternoon sun, and his heart clenched painfully. It was the same sticker she'd stuck there months ago, a subtle symbol of the bond they had shared, now haunting in its silence. He remembered the fight beneath the cherry tree, the raw vulnerability they both had barely managed to express. But now, with her absence, all those words felt lost in the cold air. Haruto tried calling her again, each unanswered ring adding weight to his chest. Texts went unread, and the usual warmth of her presence faded like the last petals of spring. His friends noticed his withdrawn demeanor. Kaido nudged him during lunch, cracking a half-hearted joke, but Haruto only managed a tired smile. In the quiet of his room, sketches piled on his desk remained unfinished, portraits of Sakura, their intertwined hands, cherry blossoms drifting through their memories. But today one piece caught his eye more than the rest. It was a poem Sakura had slipped into his sketchbook weeks ago, folded neatly and stained with a tear. He unfolded it gently. The words were simple but heavy with meaning. "Blossoms fall, but roots remain. Though petals fade, the heart sustains." Haruto traced the delicate script with his finger, feeling a bittersweet ache settle deep inside. He wasn't sure if she was saying goodbye or holding on in her own way, but it was clear Sakura was struggling, torn between her dreams and the pain of leaving everything behind. The day dragged on with gray skies and a silence that pressed against him like a winter chill. The usual sounds of the school, laughter, footsteps, the rustle of pages felt distant, muted by the weight of absence. Haruto stood by the window after class, watching the snow begin to fall gently, each flake a tiny memory drifting away. In the quiet, he promised himself he would find her. Not just to hold onto the past, but to face whatever future awaited, no matter how uncertain or painful. Because some roots, like the ones they shared, could survive even the harshest winter. Chapter 8. Yui's Breakdown. The school corridors hummed with the low murmur of students, yet Yui Nakamura's footsteps echoed oddly hollow as she made her way to the quiet corner of the library. The usual confident, composed student council president had cracked, revealing a vulnerability few had ever glimpsed. Yui's hands trembled as she clutched a worn notebook, her secret sanctuary. Her dark eyes, usually sharp and calculating, shimmered with unshed tears. She sat down heavily at a secluded table, burying her face in her hands. The pressure of orchestrating everything, of controlling the fragile balance of school life and her own loneliness, had become unbearable. Watching Sakura and Haruto drift apart had carved a hollow ache in her chest, one she masked by pushing them away. "Why did I do this?" she whispered to no one but herself. The truth she had hidden for so long clawed at her, her interference, her manipulation, all born not from malice but desperation. She had thought if she could keep them apart, maybe the spotlight wouldn't shift away from her. Maybe the loneliness she felt wouldn't grow so heavy. The memories surged like a torrent. Quiet moments spent scribbling romance fanfiction under dim lights, imagining connections she yearned for but never dared to pursue. Her collection of master keys jingled softly beside her, a symbol of her need to unlock others' lives, while her own remained shut tight. Suddenly, footsteps approached. It was Rin Fujimoto, who had noticed Yui's absence from their usual meetings and had grown concerned. Rin hesitated before speaking, her voice gentle yet firm. "Yui, you don't have to carry this alone. We all have our cracks, but maybe sharing them makes us stronger." She sat down opposite Yui, offering a small, understanding smile. Yui looked up, vulnerability flickering in her gaze. For the first time in a long while, she let the walls crumble. "I was scared," Yui confessed, voice breaking. "Scared that if Sakura and Haruto found happiness together, I'd be left with nothing. I pushed them apart because I didn't want to feel so alone, but it only made everything worse." Rin reached across the table, squeezing Yui's hand. "You're not alone anymore. We'll face this together." As the winter sun dipped behind the mountains, the two girls sat in quiet solidarity. Yui's breakdown wasn't just an end but a fragile beginning. A chance to heal, to rebuild the connections she tried to control, and to finally confront her own loneliness with honesty. Meanwhile, far from the library's calm refuge, Haruto continued to wrestle with his own turmoil, the empty desk, the lost dreams, and the growing distance from Sakura. But little did he know that Yui's confession would soon become a turning point, one that might bring them all closer to the fragile hope they so desperately needed. Chapter 9. Momo's Intervention. The crisp winter air bit through the layers of Haruto's jacket as he trudged home from school, the weight of recent events settling heavily on his shoulders. The once vibrant connection between him and Sakura felt like a fragile thread stretched thin, threatening to snap. Her absence at school was a sharp ache in his daily routine, the empty desk a constant reminder of the silence growing between them. As he reached his apartment building, a sudden burst of energetic footsteps caught his attention. "Haruto! Haruto!" The familiar voice belonged to Momo Suzuki, the ever-bubbly underclassman who had somehow become his unexpected companion in recent weeks. Momo's cheeks were flushed from the cold, her eyes sparkling with determined mischief. "You've been moping around like a lost cat. It's time to get moving." Haruto raised an eyebrow, a faint smile breaking through his gloom. "And what exactly do you have in mind this time?" Without waiting for an answer, Momo grabbed his sleeve and pulled him toward a nearby cafe, its windows steamed up with warmth and the rich aroma of coffee. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, revealing a cozy, softly lit interior. To Haruto's surprise, the cafe was quiet except for a familiar figure behind the counter, Takumi Aizawa, Sakura's younger brother. Takumi glanced up, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Hey Soma. Momo dragged you here?" "Huh? Sakura's not been herself lately. Thought you might want to see this." He slid a small, well-worn diary across the counter toward Haruto. Curiosity piqued. Haruto took the diary, its leather cover soft with use, the edges slightly frayed. He flipped it open to find Sakura's delicate handwriting spilling across the pages. Poems, sketches, and thoughts that revealed the depths of her feelings, her fears, and the secret admiration she'd harbored since their first encounter. "She's always seen the world in colors I lost," Haruto whispered, tracing a line of poetry with a trembling finger. Each page was a window into her heart, a testament to the love and vulnerability she struggled to express. Momo grinned. See? You're not the only one feeling lost. You've got to fight for this, for her. Takumi nodded, his usual snark softened with genuine concern. She's hurting, but she's holding on. Maybe this diary is the key. As Haruto absorbed the weight of Sakura's words, a spark ignited within him, a resolve to bridge the growing distance and face the uncertainty ahead. The cold outside seemed less biting now, replaced by a fragile warmth growing between them. With a renewed determination, Haruto looked up at Momo and Takumi. Thank you, both of you. It's time I stop running. Outside, snowflakes began to fall gently, dusting the world in white, a silent promise that even in the coldest winter, hope could bloom anew. Chapter 10, Diary Discoveries. Haruto sat alone at the corner table of Sakura's favorite cafe, the diary spread open before him like a fragile, secret world waiting to be uncovered. The muffled sounds of quiet conversations and the occasional clink of cups filled the room, but for Haruto, time seemed to slow to a crawl. Each page of Sakura's diary revealed her soul, raw, vulnerable, and achingly beautiful. His eyes traced the delicate lines of her handwriting, words that carried the weight of hidden emotions and silent battles. He sees the world in colors I lost, she had written. The phrase echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that stirred something deep within him. How long had she been hiding this from him? How many nights had she poured her heart into these pages, wrestling with the fear of being seen? The diary was more than just words, it was a tapestry of her inner world. Poems about fleeting moments, sketches of cherry blossoms falling like whispered promises, and confessions of a love that was at once fierce and fragile. There was a poem that made his breath catch. In the quiet spaces between us, I paint your face in colors bright, though shadows fall and winter chills. You are my warmth, my fading light. Haruto's fingers trembled as he turned the page, the vulnerability in her words cutting through his defenses. He realized now how much she had sacrificed to protect both herself and him. The pride, the pain, the hope tightly wrapped in every syllable. She wasn't just afraid to stay. She was terrified of losing herself in the process. The memory of their last heated argument surged through his mind. Her words sharp but honest. You're afraid to chase dreams. I'm afraid to stay. He had never truly understood her fear until now. She wasn't running from him, she was running from the possibility of losing the very thing she cherished most, herself. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away fiercely. He owed her more than silence and distance. Sakura had laid her heart bare, trusting him with her most guarded secrets. And now he had to find the courage to meet her vulnerability with his own. Outside, the snow fell heavier, each flake a delicate reminder of the fragile beauty in impermanence. Haruto closed the diary gently and looked up just in time to see Takumi approaching, his expression softer than usual. She wanted you to have this, Takumi said quietly, handing him a small envelope sealed with Sakura's handwriting. Haruto's hands shook as he broke the seal, revealing a final letter inside, a bittersweet farewell filled with hope and sorrow, a promise that even if they were apart, the roots of their love would run deep beneath the frozen earth. His voice barely a whisper, Haruto murmured, I won't let the blossoms fall without fighting for their return. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the cafe and the cold winter outside, Haruto understood that love was not just about holding on. Sometimes, it was about embracing the pain of separation and finding the strength to grow beyond it. And he was ready to do just that. Chapter 11. Graduation Goodbyes. Snow fell like drifting petals outside the classroom window, blanketing the school grounds in a soft hush. The air was thick with anticipation. Laughter and farewells echoed through the halls as students in pressed uniforms exchanged yearbooks, hugs, and promises they wouldn't keep. But Haruto's desk sat empty. He wasn't in the classroom, wasn't lining up with the others for the final ceremony. Instead, he stood alone beneath the old cherry tree behind the school, the one where Sakura once told him, "Some things are too beautiful to put into words." His sketchbook lay open on the bench beside him, charcoal smudged across his fingers as he traced the delicate lines of the tree's branches. The blossoms hadn't bloomed yet. It was too early, too cold. But in his mind, he could see them. Pale pink, trembling in the breeze, blooming out of season like the feelings he'd tried for so long to bury. Each stroke on the page was a memory. her hair brushing his shoulder on the rooftop, her hand in his during the beachside fireworks. The tremble in her voice when she whispered, "I'm scared of staying." He was scared too. But this sketch was no longer about fear. It was about remembering. About hoping. Inside the auditorium, the final names were called. Applause rang out, but the seat beside Yui remained vacant. She clutched her program tightly, her eyes darting occasionally toward the doors, but she knew he wouldn't come. Not when Sakura wasn't here. The ceremony ended. Ribbons were thrown. Confetti fluttered down like frozen petals. Yet Yui stayed seated, her expression unreadable. Outside, Haruto closed his sketchbook and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Missed your own graduation?" Yui's voice was quiet behind him. He turned to see her standing there in her uniform, her coat dusted with snow. Her usual sharp confidence was dimmed, but her eyes held a strange tenderness. "She's leaving tomorrow," Yui said. "Morning flight. International terminal." "You have," her voice cracked slightly, "less than 24 hours. Haruto's eyes widened, the breath knocked from his lungs. "You knew." "She didn't want to tell anyone. Said it would be easier that way. But I knew. I've always known." Yui looked away. "And I was cruel. I told her to follow her dream when I didn't have one of my own." Haruto stepped closer, the silence between them stretching like thin ice. "You're not the only one who's been alone," Yui whispered. "But you still have a chance to change things. Go." He nodded. There was no time to waste. As he sprinted out of the school gate, the snow began to fall faster, stinging his face, melting on his skin. He reached the edge of the parking lot, breathless, and paused. Until he heard the unmistakable roar of an engine. Kaido. Grinning behind the handle of his battered scooter, scarf flapping in the wind like a flag of mischief, Kaido waved. "About time, Picasso. Hop on." Haruto didn't ask questions. He jumped on, and the scooter took off with a screech, racing through the slush and fading light, carving a trail of urgency through the winter gloom. They didn't speak. There was no need. The wind screamed past them, and all Haruto could think was that he had to reach her. That he had to find her. That he had to say what he should have said long ago. They rounded a corner too fast. The tires slipped. The scooter crashed. And everything went white. But even as pain shot through his arm and snow soaked into his jacket, Haruto scrambled to his feet. Kaido, groaning, waved him on. "Go, idiot. Go." Haruto ran. The airport lights glowed in the distance like the warmth of a fading dream. And inside, somewhere, was the girl he loved. Boarding a plane, carrying a heart full of poems and a farewell she never wanted to give. Chapter 12, Airport Dash. The fluorescent lights above the terminal flickered softly, casting long shadows on the cold marble floor. Outside, the snow swirled relentlessly, veiling the world in white, just like the fragile veil of distance and silence now stretched taut between Haruto and Sakura. Haruto's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled through the crowd, dragging his injured arm close to his chest. His jacket was soaked from the crash, and the cold bit through every layer of clothing, but nothing could numb the fire burning inside him. He scanned every face, every traveler, every tearful farewell, desperate for one. There, near Gate 14. Sakura. She stood alone, clutching her suitcase handle like a lifeline, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her lips trembled as she stared at the departure board. "Haruto." Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile, broken, and so achingly familiar. He broke through the crowd in a blur, ignoring the stares, the shouts, the warnings. "Sakura," he called, voice raw with urgency. She turned slowly, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. I'm sorry," he gasped, stepping closer despite the crowd, the cold, the world trying to pull them apart. "I should have said this sooner. I'm sorry for doubting you, for being afraid to chase my dreams, but more than anything, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel alone." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she swallowed hard, words choking in her throat. "Haruto, I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was afraid if I stayed, I'd lose myself. I didn't know how to carry the weight of everything." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We don't have to carry it alone," he whispered. "I want to face it with you. No matter where you go or what you do, I'll be there." Her hand trembled, then slowly reached out, slipping into his. A soft, hopeful smile broke through her sorrow. "Promise me one thing? Anything. Don't let me forget who I am. Don't let me forget us." He squeezed her hand tightly, sealing the promise between them. "I won't." The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. Time was running out, but in that moment, neither noticed. All that mattered was the warmth in their joined hands, the whispered confessions, the fragile hope blooming against the frozen winter night. As Sakura turned to board, Haruto shouted one last time, voice steady and full of love. "I'm coming with you. This isn't goodbye." She looked back, disbelief and joy mingling in her eyes. "You're serious?" "More than anything." And with that he ran after her toward a future unwritten together. Outside, the snow continued to fall, no longer a symbol of cold and endings, but of fresh starts and endless possibilities. Thanks for watching our video. If you find this video interesting, then please subscribe our YouTube channel. If you're watching this video from TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, then follow our page for more contents like this.